So today I'm joined on Zoom with Peter Cox. Peter's a good mate of mine who's I've known for a couple of years now. He's the CEO of Leadership Dynamics, and I've had the pleasure of being able to work with him professionally at the West Tigers. He's worked with a number of football clubs, CEOs, professional athletes, and had an impact on countless people's lives. So thanks for joining us, Peter, mate. How you doing? I know you haven't been that well last couple of weeks. We'll get into that a bit, but how are you travelling at the moment?
Oh, I'm starting to put some weight on, Chris. It's been a big 10 weeks. Not ready to play NRL like you yet, but I'll keep watching you on the TV.
Good stuff, mate. Now, I've sort of mentioned that you've been with quite a number of sporting clubs. You give us, for anyone who's listening, give a bit of a background into who the people, some of the people you've worked with in the past, sporting teams, athletes, coaches, etc.
Sure. I mean, I had the good fortune to be flying back from a leadership conference in Singapore in late 2004. And sitting next to me was Wayne Pearce, who's now on the Independent Commission of the National Rugby League. And Wayne and I have built a great relationship over the last 15 years. And he asked me what I did. And I told him that I tried to get into the National Rugby League with my leadership dynamics process with several clubs, and just wasn't able to get through the front door because, as you know, there's a lot of unity and, keeping things protected in that environment. And he graciously referred me to Des Hasler. February 2005, when Des had coached about 10 games. He's now at 400 plus games. And after that 2-hour presentation, I was with Manly from 05 to 011. And 7 final series, I was able to help contribute. I just see myself as one piece of the jigsaw. I don't take credit in relation to what professional athletes like you go through on a day-in-day basis. But I do believe that you're always looking for that 1% on it. And I know my process made a big difference at Manly, made a big difference at South Sydney in 2014 with Michael Maguire when he reached out to me when I was at another leadership conference in Singapore. Same story, went and presented to Madge my process, and here I am now with Michael Maguire still 6 years later, and that's how I met you at the West Tigers with Benji Marshall, captain, and all the boys, and that's been an 18-month ride so far.
Yeah. So as you said, you've worked for quite a number of years and with a lot of quite influential people and successful people within that leadership space. But one thing and a conversation we've had is that a lot of people sort of look at leadership and think it's a title or think it's a position or a role, and it's so much more than that, isn't it? So like obviously for someone who works as an expert within the leadership space, what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, so whenever I connect with a new client, like when I went into the West Tigers with my process 18 months ago, or a new business owner, I mean, my clients are small to medium enterprise business owners. They ask me the same question. They say, what is leadership? They say, I need to grow my leadership. I need better leaders around me. What that really means is they need better behaviours. That's what they need. Leadership is about behaviours, discipline and focus on the right behaviours to achieve the results you want to achieve. Most people focus on the results. I want to be a millionaire. I want to win an NRL premiership. That's the result. It's about the behaviours. And when you look at what goes on over a season of National Rugby League, you see good behaviours and you see bad behaviours. When I go into corporate entities, I see good behaviours and I see bad behaviours. And that leads to the next word, which is culture. And culture is just a word. Good leadership, good culture. Bad leadership, bad culture, which means it's driven by good or bad behaviours, which determines the environment in which you are operating in, whether it becomes a high performance environment and winning culture or a low performance environment and losing culture.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty good point you made there about, the individual behaviours. That's, what leadership is, because especially times like this, I mean, you look at everything that's going on in the world, a lot of people are going through tough and difficult times, and, there's probably not a lot of guidance out there. So in essence, people are having to lead their own lives. So, if I sort of said to you, what does it mean, or what would it take for someone to lead their own life? How would you be able to sort of describe that?
Well, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror every single day. It's about being truthful. Leaders face the truth head on. So when you look at the man in the mirror, you know if you're taking shortcuts. You know if you're not doing the right thing by your family. You know if you're not doing the right thing by your clients. It's about integrity. It's about authenticity. And over the last 32 years of leading, firstly myself, and then leading influential people of all different walks of life, every single day it starts with me being the best person, the best leader that I can be. It's about personal accountability and having a hunger to not want to be the same person next year this time.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I think, for me, if someone said to me, how do you lead your own life? It's about trying to keep yourself accountable every day and towards your own goals. I mean, everyone's got this idea of what success is and what they want to achieve out of life, which is good. And if people have clarity about what they want to achieve, that's the first step already taken. And then it's about, okay, well, how are you going to lead yourself in that direction? How are you going to keep yourself accountable every single day? And a lot of thing that comes up with people and in some of the self-doubt and some of the fear and, but not being able to overcome failure is the idea of control and what we do have control over and dwelling on things we don't. So, what would your advice be for how people can take control of their own lives and be able to lead their own lives?
Well, I think you've used the word failure there. You failed. I failed in my life. We all make good choices and bad choices. I was once a 20-year-old. I mean, I grew up in Campbelltown, western suburb of Sydney. I went to Bradbury Primary School the day it opened. I went to Ed Scott High School the day it opened. I was never born with money. My parents were working class to middle income people that moved from London in 1965. I was 2 years of age, and I saw my parents fight for everything. If there's one thing that I really respect, as my dad was my great role model, was the discipline that he had every single day of his life to provide for us and to really try and be the very best he could be as a father and a human being. Failure, we've all failed. And that's what can affect our mindset, is that your past isn't your future. And there are lessons that you need to learn from failure. Yeah. And if you implement those lessons into your life, that's the first step to now starting to create traction and momentum to start becoming successful. Life's not fair. Life's not easy. And if you don't learn the lessons and you keep repeating them, you're going to fail.
Yeah, it's something that you would have seen so much of it, over your time working with, CEOs, athletes, coaches, and seeing how people perceive failure. I mean, I even know from my own journey, when I was coming up, sometimes you would try and avoid failure. You had to be perfect. You always wanted to be a perfectionist, avoid failure. But then it's only once you start to fail, you realize it's actually you need to fail in order to take that next step to learn that next lesson. And I think then you see challenges and setbacks and you see tough times in a different way as an opportunity rather than trying to avoid them. So, and obviously, everyone's going through a lot of troubling and difficult times right now. And I mentioned it before yourself, you've been through a bit of a rough patch. And tell us a bit about what you've been going through over the last sort of, 10 weeks and how you sort of led yourself through this tough time personally for yourself.
Yeah, well, 10 weeks ago, I woke up with a little bit of a sore throat, but it wasn't like your normal sore throat. And then I realized, wow, my neck's really swollen out. It looks like, what the heck? It looked like an elephant neck. So I went to the doctors, and the doctor said he had a feel around my neck, and he said, you've got a major thyroid issue. And I'd never heard of a thyroid gland before. And so then it started with, you're going to have to go and have radiation into it for scans. Then you're going to have to do a biopsy for cancer. So I went through all that. and they diagnosed me with acute thyroiditis. I had a viral infection that attacked my thyroid, and it created what they call hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism basically means if you're driving at 60 kilometers an hour, now you're going at 160. So my metabolism nearly tripled, and I dropped 15 and a half kilograms.
Like when you sort of found out everything, it was like when you heard about, obviously you didn't know at first, but was there a bit of fear and you were a bit scared at first?
I'll never forget going in for the biopsy where they put the needle into the thyroid, and it really is not a nice experience. And my wife was waiting outside for me, and I'm just, it's really, it was a real perspective builder about what people go through when they're not well. And I was very unwell. And then, 3 days later, you go to see the specialist, and my wife, Debbie's holding my hand there, and you sit down, and he comes in and he just says, "You don't have cancer." That's
a fear. That would have been the relief right there.
But you have hyperthyroidism, you have acute hyperthyroidism, and I think it's called de Guavian's disease or something he called it, I don't know. And then he explained to me what it means, and he said, "You're going to suffer. And this has to, it's going to have to heal in its own time, and it'll take 6 to 10 weeks. Well, after about 6 or 7 weeks, it started to, I started to be able to move forward. I had to see an endocrinologist, have blood tests every week to look at the levels of my thyroid, which is T1, T2, T3. I've learned all this stuff now. I didn't even know what it was. And what really happens is you shake, you get sweats like women have menopause, but the sweats that you have is like honey. It's thicker. And so it stains all the sheets and the pillows and everything. We have to throw all that out, and you basically can't get out of bed. You walk 15 meters and you are absolutely stuffed. So, for a period there, I was looking like a bit of a caveman, and my wife, I was just grey. And I do this for a living. I had to really work on the power of my mind and think clearly about coming out the other side. And it's no different to what's going on in this crazy COVID world. It's no different to what's going on after a bad loss that you guys had on the weekend. It's your thoughts will determine your destiny. You can't change the past, but what can you think of and visualize in the future? Because the power of visualization, I believe, is a real powerful mindset process to heal, to invigorate, and to give you courage to keep going.
So how did you use visualization to help you through? So what specifically did you do?
Great question. I love my golf, as you know, and every year I go on a golfing trip to either Barnbougle, Tasmania, or to Queenstown in New Zealand. Well, we can't go to New Zealand this year. We're hoping to go to Tasmania in mid-November. Oh, you're quite welcome to come too, mate. We don't take pesos, but if you want to come, you can.
Oh, mate, I'll be the old shark there, mate. I'll have my handicap at 36 and come in with an 8 under. 8 over.
So I just visualised being there with my 7 or 8 good mates, my son who doesn't play golf but comes on every trip and walks the golf course for 4 days with us. The long lunches, the wineries, just the banter, taking the mickey out of each other. And also me and my best mate always buy some pretty special outfits that stand out a little bit just to create a bit of joy. And I focused on that. I also focused on what I'm grateful about.
Yep. What
could I be grateful about? And I was real deliberate about that. I stayed away from the news. I don't watch the news.
Yeah.
So in this crazy world.
100%. Yeah.
I watched 64 games of NRL, as you know, because I was lying in bed, and the NRL started the week I got diagnosed and I was ill. So I just watched 8 games a weekend, staying in that NRL bubble, because that's young men like you fighting for your dream. As you know, I've done 13 years of it. So that just kept me in my own little bubble. I'd watch a movie once a day, and I'd read 15 minutes to half a day, half an hour, something really positive in a book or on something I found on Google. It puts positive stuff in my mind.
Yeah. So when you talk about gratitude, so obviously, for me, that's something that I've learnt to help me get through a lot of my past setbacks. And is it something that you tried to do as a routine every day, or was it something that you really utilized more when you got into that negative headspace?
No, I do it every single day.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And, you know, when I wake up this morning, I was at the gym at 6:30. I trained for 90 minutes. I'm 57 years of age, and I'm just so grateful. I drive a beautiful car, as you know, a C63 AMG. I'm not sharing that. I'm sharing that for the reason I used to drive a brown Honda Civic in Campbelltown with 200,000 miles on the clock. I don't forget where I came from. And that car didn't start. You had to put a spark plug in to start it. And that's the car I bought for my wife. We had $11 in the bank when we started our first business. And we didn't have a fridge. We had an esky.
Yeah.
So
come a long way, mate. Come a long way.
So I just I don't want to ever lose sight of my Campbelltown roots, where I came from. You know, some of my mates are in jail. Some of them are dead today. That's true, you know, and some, you know, and Mike could have gone on that path, you know, but I didn't.
Yeah. So when you obviously just going back to when you first sort of got ill, and then, as you said, you went through a period where you had to suffer, you know, with all the disease, you know, going through, and the toxins going through your body. Obviously, you know, there would have been a point in time when you're in a very negative mind space, and you had to try and overcome those negative thoughts. And this would have been something completely new, you know, obviously to you. You haven't been obviously sick like this before.
Correct.
But was there any past challenges or setbacks, or anyone you drew inspiration of, or lessons that you may have learned from the past that helped you get through some of those difficult days?
Yeah, well, I had a mentor for 22 years, and it's actually 7 years, I think it's the 13th of August, that my mentor, Jim, passed away of esophageal cancer in Atlanta, Georgia. So I looked, you know, the last picture I had of him was he was very ill, and I knew it would be the last time I saw him, and I just kept saying to myself, that's not me. I'm going to get through this. But I'm also very lucky that I had some very strong people in my life. Michael Maguire rang me 2 or 3 times a week. I served Michael at the West Tigers, the New Zealand Rugby League team, quietly behind the scenes, but we are very close as a result of the journey we've been on the last 6 years. My best mate, DK. I had my son's old football coach, a guy called Anthony Seminara, really give me a whack in the head a couple of times, an Italian soccer coach. So I had some strong men around me, my dad ringing me, my son ringing me. And I was very lucky to have a beautiful wife that, mate, she was like Mother Teresa. She really took care of me, you know. So
yeah, you mentioned about how important that is, having that sort of, you know, not only a mentor, but that support network. But not only just going through this tough time, but, you know, throughout, you know, your career, and as you've obviously, you know, got from that kid in Campbelltown to where you are today, how important are support networks and mentors? And you know, what would your advice be to people to try and build those around them to help provide some guidance for them?
Well, in relation to leadership, you hear when I sit down with a new potential client, and I've got a 60-minute presentation at 5 o'clock today with a referral, the first question I'm going to ask this potential client is, who leads you? Now, 9 times out of 10, they say, well, I lead myself, and I lead myself in my business. And I say, well, how's that going for you? And then they say, well, that's why you're doing this Zoom with me, or that's why I'm speaking to you. You've been referred to me. And, you know, I've got a great story about Michael Maguire. When Madge rang me in 2013 in Singapore, I'd had 2 years out of the National Rugby League. I had 7 years with Des. Des went to the Bulldogs, and I think his name was Alan Thompson, the Australian swimming coach, was there in my role, so it was too complicated. So I just quietly did things behind the scenes for Des, uncontracted, but I wasn't in the bubble, if you know what I mean. I wasn't in that environment. And then I said, I'm not going to go back in the NRL. And then Madge rings me. And my wife was just waving at the phone. No. She knew where this was going, because I love my footy, as you know. And the only reason I went back into the National Rugby League is I asked Madge, after half an hour of sort of talking and winding and weaving, I said to him, Michael, why are you calling me? And this is the only reason I connected with Madge. He says, I'm calling you because I had two mentors I had a great mentor in Wigan and won two premierships. You won the Super Cup or whatever they call it in the premiership there. And he said, I've had two mentors at South Sydney that don't work for me. And I've been told you can lead me to grow my accountability as the head coach of South Sydney Rabbitohs. And then 2014, I connected with Madge, and it was just that missing piece that he didn't have in his life. He's got the high performance team around him, but as you know, what my process is completely different to everything else that goes on in the West Tigers. And that's the only reason I said I'll see you in 2 days' time in the South Sydney boardroom. It takes humility to be led. And what gives me the right to lead you, Chris, if I'm not being led? Because I've got a CEO in the US that was my mentor's CEO that leads me and makes me accountable in my own personal life, my financial life, and my health and wellness and my business life. He challenges me and he speaks into my own life. So now that gives me the authority to lead you.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree. I mean, you need that guidance in every facet of your life. And I think, it doesn't matter who you are. It's about, as I said, when you talk about humility, you're asking for support, asking when you need help, whether that's within your leadership, whether that it's in any other facet of your own life. And, we've spoken about it plenty of times before about a lot of people might not see themselves as leaders, but essentially everyone's a leader because, as you said, you need to lead your own life. And people can have more of an impact and influence on themselves and others than they actually realise. So, what would your advice be for people who, aren't quite sure of that capability or how they can have an impact and influence not only on themselves but others?
You've got to find someone that you trust that is more successful than you and there's authenticity about whoever this person is, that you allow to speak into your life, because it will inspire you, it will agitate you, it will stimulate you, and it will grow you. And the mission statement I have for Leadership Dynamics, as you know, is building stronger leaders to live better lives. I didn't say building stronger leaders to drive a Ferrari, okay? But here's what I know about my clients. My clients ring me after 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and they say, Coxie, you've changed my life. I've made another $1 million. My clients, some of them are extremely wealthy people, or they're elite sporting coaches like Des Hasler and Michael Maguire. They're already on the journey of success. But I also have some clients that are just starting out and they don't really know how to grow their business, how to grow themselves, how to grow people around them. And so I start with the business owner. I start with the sporting coach, the head of the organisation, and start working on life principles and leadership principles to get them right, to earn trust from the people they lead. People have to see the leader change for the better.
No, great advice, mate. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Some of the stuff you've shared, obviously with your own personal journey, but the people you work with and some of the things that have helped you. You've had obviously, quite a illustrious career from when you first started, but the words of wisdom, I think people will get a lot out of. So appreciate your time, mate.
And I appreciate the connection we have and what you're doing with One Wellbeing and the corporate athlete program and being part of that. And because you've got post-football coming into your life soon and, you're a natural leader, Chris. You're not as extroverted as me, but the way you think, it's not normal thinking, and you're going to make a real difference and impact the lives of many people post-football. And I look forward to seeing the journey with you.
Can't wait, mate. Can't wait. Cheers.
Okay, thanks.